Okay. Jack, do you see the screen that you need?
Yes.
So we're back here. Is that correct?
Is that the screen you need, Jack?
Yes, I was on the next one.
Okay.
So you're changing the slides and go to the next one. And go to the next one. Now let's go to the next one. I think to save time, this is the executive view. I want to just point out some things that we have here. And that is what we ask these executives in this study is what is it you're measuring now with learning, and what is it we'd like to see from the learning team, and then what is your ranking on these measures. And you can see the data you have in 3 columns here. What I want to show you here is that reaction, our most measured outcome level, the majority of them receive it. I should say over 50%, 53%. They have that data, but only 22% want it, and it's the least valuable data set. The first 2 in this category are input data. We call that level 0, and we're going to show you that later in a few minutes. Let's go to the next slide. And you can see some gaps, and this is what I want to point out. Only 11% see the actual changes in behavior, the application, that the salespeople are following the right process. They're selling this new product, or they're selling the new software. That is at level 3, and then 61% want that. So 11 to 61 is a big gap there. But the big gap, the super gap, is the impact. That's connecting what we do to the business, like in sales and so forth. 8% said they see that now, 96% want that, and that's our #1 measure. And then the next big gap there is 4% for ROI. Is 4% see that now, 74% want that. So those are the 2 big gaps, and it's a #1 and 2 measures. So we've got some big gaps. So if we go to another slide, and then the next slide, go to the next slide, and now let's look at quickly a feasible way to look at this. So if we condense those 8 measures that we just had into 6 levels, you can see what we have on screen. Level 0 is the inputs. It's the volume, efficiency, and cost. You can see they want to see that. That's an important process. On this particular slide, you see the current status is where we think we are. The status on the next column is the goal. That's the best practice. And you see a number on the last column, and that's the latest benchmarking data, what our users are able to achieve. So 0 that's input. That's not output at all. It's not outcomes. You can see that. Now level 1, 100% is where we think we are. We need to be 100%, but we're actually monitoring less than that, and we understand that sometimes it's a resource issue. If you go to the next slide, you see some other percentages. Now, this is the percent of programs evaluated at this level. So if you go to the next slide, if you could, you can see we're suggesting 80 to 90% at level 2. That means 80 to 90% of the programs we evaluate at this level. We are suggesting where we may be for the current status, and then you've got the best practice there. Now, level 3 is where we have a huge gap here. That is, we're measuring probably only at 10% or less. And that's, are you tracking to see what you are measuring? I mean, how the participants are using what you've learned, what they've learned. That's level 3. And then 30% is our best practice. Now, you can see the benchmarking as well. So we suggest that 30% of your product training programs, you should be checking to see if they're using what they've learned. Now the impact is next. If we go to the next slide, you can see a difference there. We suggest 10% best practice. 10% of our programs each year we measure at that level. That might be more if you have a lot of product training, a lot of sales training. That number might even go up from there. But that's usually it satisfies executives. You can see our best practice benchmarking is 14.4%. And we think we may be at the 5% level now. Now remember, at this level, we have to isolate the effects of our program on the data. And that's critical. That is, if we don't sort out the effect that our product training has had from other influences, we are not credible. Finally, the ROI, we may be roughly rounded off to 0 for this group. We put 1% in to be generous there. 5% is our best practice, and you can see slightly less than that for our benchmarking. So some gaps here, but this is a feasible way. The message we want to take away here is that most of what we do probably should not be pushed up to level 4 and 5. But these days there's a lot of pressure for some programs to go to that level, and we're going to show you some of the criteria to use to get to that in just a minute. I want to quickly go to the next slide. And the next slide, push it on through if you would. And just remind us some of the measures. As you look at this level, at level 1 in particular, some very important ones is relevance to your needs, important to your success, something that you'd recommend to others, and it's new information, and intent to use. I think those are probably the 5 most important ones there. That's critical. We need to always measure that because they often have the ability to predict application. They connect in a correlation to application. And now if you go to the next slide, obviously for learning it's mostly information, or maybe knowledge, maybe a few skill sets. But level 3, we want the use of knowledge, use of skills, or frequency, and maybe success, and the barriers and enablers. So let's think about use of what we're doing as 1, frequency of that number 2, and down at the bottom, success with application, and then the barriers to our success and enablers to our success. Those are 5 key indicators we want to look at level 3. But now level 4 is where the interest really is. And let's go to the next slide. And that's the impact. New accounts, sales for existing customers, market share, turn rate, profit of the sale. These are all kinds of measures that we want to see, but remember we want to isolate the effects of our program on the data. And so let's look at how we do that. And of course level 5, it's the ROI. We're going to have 3 different ways to do that. So ROI is a percent, benefit cost ratio, and payback period. 3 different ways to do that. Now, I'd like to just move quickly through the next 2 slides. I want to take you to some benchmarking about which programs do we take to each level. Let's go on through now, skip that slide, go on to the next slide, and then even to the next slide. Now, let's back up one just for a minute. And these are some data that shows why do we select a program for impact and ROI. And you can see the number 1 item here is the cost of the program. So very expensive programs warrant this type of analysis. Very close to that would be the importance of the program. Is it a very important product, for example? And then the third one is executive interest, and invisibility is next. So those are sort of clustered together. So if it's important, it's expensive, it's highly visible, and it attracts executive interest, hey, we ought to be measuring that at level 4 and 5. Now I want to show you quickly the model we use to select this, to collect the data. So if we go to the model, and that's going to be the, and you can see it's a sequential logical model. It starts with objectives at the, we have to have objectives set at the level 3 and 4. That's application and impact. And then we do the planning, and then we collect the data during the program, and that's reaction and learning. And then post-program data collection is application and impact. Now just a note, again, I'll provide you a linkage to a case study that takes you through all of this process, and you'll even see the evaluation planning tools that go along with that. But the one challenge block here is collecting the post-program data. That's the application and impact you see on the right side of your screen. Now if you go to the next slide, after we have the impact, then we isolate the effects of the program on that data. What we mean is this. You can imagine in product training, when you introduce the product, you've got all of the promotion around the product, you've got the product design features, you've got in the advertising, and you've got market growth, and you've got whatever. All of that stuff is going on. If we don't take a step here to sort out how much we've contributed, we really just don't have credibility, because marketing people are doing everything they can to claim all of the sales, at least everything they're connected with it. So we got to do the same. And so we'll look at some techniques in just a minute. Then converting data to money, that's easy if it's sales, if it's product sales, because it's the profit of the sale. But sometimes we're working on things like customer complaints that we're going to reduce. And that gets into a little more detail on the calculation. The good news is that that's often already there. It's just a matter of finding it. But those two blocks, isolating the effects of the program and converting data to money, are two challenge blocks here. Then we bring in the fully loaded cost of the program. So you got monetary value compared to cost, and that's the ROI, classic ROI. And then we have the intangibles that are not in the process, and they're not in the calculation. They're still important. It's measures that we could not convert to money credibly with a reasonable amount of resources. And that's usually brand, image, customer satisfaction, reputation, those kinds of things. And then we report the results to the appropriate audiences. So that's the 10 easy, logical, rational steps for an ROI study. Now, I want to go a couple more blocks here and remind us where this comes from to start with. That is the business alignment. So if we go another slide, let's go another slide, and it comes from here. You can see in this slide there's we start at the left side and go all the way through to our project, and then we evaluate through, and you see end here. Start here, end here. That is, we start with needs that are clearly defined at 5 levels. They translate into objectives at 5 levels, and we evaluate at 5 levels if we want to. You remember, we have an option of where do we stop the evaluation. It starts with a payoff need, deciding is this a project worth pursuing, or an opportunity worth pursuing, or a problem worth solving. Now, for product training, that's usually given. We want to do that, so that's not even an issue. We go to business need quickly. Business need is basically which of the sales and marketing metrics are we driving? Is it new sales to new accounts? Is it increasing, trying to sell this product to the existing client? Are we trying to reduce customer complaints? Are we trying to improve customer satisfaction? We're trying to reduce increase the profit of the sale, or to reduce the sales cycle. My point is, we want to know that business need. Then we look at what is it our salespeople need to be doing. That's a level 3 performance need. That translates into performance objective. Then we have our learning need, and that's the content of our program, what they must learn to perform that way, and that's a learning objective. Then we have our preference need, and that is, how should people involved in this, particularly the attendees, the participants, how should they prefer this to be, perceive this to be, and that's things like they must see it as relevant, it's important to their success, it's something that they will do and use. So that's critical. The point I'm making here is that programs often fail because they're not properly aligned to that business measure. In the product training area, they're often more aligned than other types of training, but we sometimes still miss it. But we want to go to our team and say, what is it you want them to be doing? And it may be as simple as this. I want each of our sales team members to sell this product within the first month. One sale. That's very specific. That's a need, and that's an objective you can see coming right out of that. Now, with that in mind, let's go to our 3 challenge areas. We've got an example of a V model here that shows you how all of this works. You can read that later. It shows you that connection. But let's go to now the data collection. Next slide. And this is our first challenge area, collecting level 3 and level 4 data. You can see we can use something as easy as questionnaires, or we can put action planning and performance contracting in place and capture level 4 data. The level 4 data can also come, and normally is performance monitoring. That's just checking the records. So let's put it in perspective. In an ideal world, if we, at level 3, our best method is observation. That is, if we had some invisible person observing the sales teams, the salesperson, that's our best method. We have that sometimes if we have mystery customers, mystery shoppers. Sometimes we have that if we have a team of people always observing the process. If we're using technology, sometimes observation is built in with the technology. If that doesn't work, we have other methods that will get there. Now, for level 4 performance monitoring, the best way is to go capture the data, the sales data, the new accounts, wherever it is, whatever it is, we capture it. Otherwise, we can use things like action plans or performance contracts. The point is that these are some very simple, it's very finite possibilities of tools here to get to the application and impact. Now let's go to the next slide very quickly, and that's the method to isolate the effects of our program. These are just different ways to sort it out. Now, if we had a classic experimental versus control group, that works best, and that's when you have one group gets the training, another does not. We sometimes can do that with our product training because it takes so long to get it done with a group. Maybe we can have some go through it while we're waiting for the complete cycle. We can have the first group compared to the last group. If we're doing it through blended learning or e-learning, that's not the case. Everyone will take it at the same time. We could use a classic trend line analysis. This is just a forecast or projection of the trend of this data item before, and look at the trend after. If it's a new product, the trend won't be there, so that won't work for that. What it comes down to is the participant's estimate is probably the best. That's the salesperson, the participant in our program. They actually are estimating the impact of this training on their success. Let's think about selling the new product to an existing customer. Now we ask them we work with the group and find out as best we can what could have caused that. What else has caused that improvement? You remember, we're working from a fact now. Sales have increased. Sales to existing customers have increased. Sales of this product. So that's a fact in our system. Now, we find out what else has caused it, and then we collect the data from the person in a very non-threatening, unbiased way, and then we adjust for the error. What we mean is this. One of our standards, and this process has 12 standards. It's in your handout document, your downloaded document. There are 12 guiding principles. Number 7 on that list is estimates of improvement are always adjusted for the potential error of the estimate. So we ask a person this question. Hey, this is a person who sold the new product, and they've got a fact. We say, what else could have caused that? Now, what percent goes to this program, this training? And what is your confidence in that allocation on a scale of 0 to 100%? If a person says, hey, I'm 80% confident, that means they've got 20% error. We're going to take the 20% out. Let me give an example. If they've sold in a month $20,000 of the sale, additional sales for this new product, if 30% of that goes to this training, that's 30% of 20,000 is 6,000. And if I'm 80% confident of that allocation, that means they've got 20% error. I'm going to take the 20% out. And so to do that, it's the same as multiplying by the 80. So then 6,000 times 80% is now 4,800. So we claim $4,800 in sales. That's the participant estimate. There's some other estimates, and if you look at the next slide, so if we go to the next slide, you can see the distribution from our benchmarking. This is showing us what percent of programs are isolated using that particular method. What I've just described, the participant estimate, is 55%, which means that 55% of the time, that's what's being used. Our best method is the control group. You can see it's 32%, 29% for that simple trend line, and you've got some breakdowns for the other. This adds up to be more than 100% because we encourage multiple methods, and then we use our guiding principles to come to the right method. We always go with the most credible one, but if they're equally credible, we're going to use another standard, and that is to go with the one that gives us the lowest ROI. We're being ultra conservative here. So we're going to always do this step. We have to do this to be credible. Let's go to another slide, and that's our last critical credibility issue, and challenge issue, I should say, and that's the data conversion to money. The good thing about sales is that the profit margin is a standard value converting it to sale, converting it to profits. That is, if our profit margin is 20%, if you go back to that previous example, if we sold $4,800 this one person because of this sales training, and we're at a 20% profit margin, that's $960 profit related to this program. Sometimes it's beyond the sales. It may be like a customer complaint, and that's a quality measure. There may be a standard value. If not, we can use an expert in customer relations maybe to tell us what that is. Sometimes we save time of the sales team. We're trying to reduce the sales cycle time. That may be a standard value of the time of the person. My point is that we've got ways to get to the money. In the sales scenario, it's easy because it's already done for us in most cases. Now, let's continue. The next slide just shows some detail about the credibility of these data sets. I think we can move on that. The good thing is that we got them for us. Now, if we go to the cost side very quickly, cost categories, it's fully loaded costs. If we take people away from work for their training, we're going to put that time in there. That's the time for the participants. Salaries and benefit participant time, but we put all of the cost in there. It may be prorated design and development and needs assessment, for example. With all the costs, let's don't forget, before we get to the ROI calculation, that we've got our intangibles. That's listed in the next slide. This is some of the typical intangibles that you see, and we have them in any program. They're great there in the product training as well. We may be improving brand awareness, customer satisfaction, innovation, whatever. Those are typical. What we're suggesting here is that these measures must be connected to our program. They're listed as intangible because we didn't convert them to money. We tried, but if we cannot do it credibly with a reasonable amount of resources, we leave it as an intangible. Let's go to the next slide. It shows the ROI calculation. And it's benefit cost ratio and ROI as a percent are our two most common ones. And so let's look at an example. If we look at the next slide, we've got if we had a cost of a program to be $400,000 and the benefits of $500,000. That gives a benefit cost ratio of 3. Now you can calculate this yourself, of course. Excuse me, not 3, but 1.25. 500,000 divided by 400,000 is 1.25. And the ROI is net. It's 500,000. That's the monetary benefits. That would be like the profits that we have for this group connected to this program, minus the cost, the $400,000 cost, divided by the cost, times 100 to get to ROI. Now the next slide shows you the final calculation. You can see that's 200%. Excuse me, it's 25%. So let me just talk about this for a minute. First, that ROI calculation is a standard calculation for ROI from a finance and accounting textbook. If you go look at the textbook, it's earnings divided by investment. Earnings is what did we make on this project? Well, we made the difference in 500,000, 400,000. We made $100,000. That's our earnings. What is investment? Well, that's our cost, $400,000. Times 100 classically gets us to the percent, 25%. Calculated the same as if your CFO is investing in a building or if you put your money in a banking organization. This is calculated the same way as well. Now, that's good news because we align with accounting and finance here. It also means that we are now calling our learning program, our product training program, investment, and that needs to be a message. This is investing in people, investing in our product, investing in our sales. And we put the BCR here for 2 reasons. One is that we remind ourselves that the 2 processes are related, but they're different. Sometimes a person will mistakenly take the benefit cost ratio, multiply that by 100. They would call that 125% ROI. Not true. ROI is only 25%. You can see the mathematical relationship between the 2. The benefit cost ratio minus the number 1 gives us the 0.25 times 100 gets us the ROI. So benefit cost ratio minus 1 times 100 is the ROI. We're also reminding ourselves that ROI is and BCR come from 2 different perspectives. Benefit cost ratio comes out of governments. It's got a long history. ROI comes out of the business community with a long history, about 200 years for ROI, about 10 centuries for the benefit cost ratio. Now, if we go to the next slide, we just quickly, I want to get 2 more points and three more slides, and we'll stop. We work off of objectives, so we'd actually set an objective for ROI. We may set it the same as other investments, and that is that we look at our capital expenditure. We have a target often that's maybe 12 to 18% these days. We could use the same number. Sometimes we set it slightly above that, and like 20, 25%. So you see a lot of our published studies following that. Or it could be at break even. 0 ROI is actually the break even, and it's a legitimate goal. That is, if you're recovering the cost of the product training, that's quite good. Now, the last one is let the client set the expectation. But remember, this is the minimum acceptable performance for an objective, whether it's ROI level or an objective at level 1, 2, 3, or 4. That's reaction, learning, application, impact, and ROI. So we're thinking about objectives at all 5 levels. But remember, you define your objective as the minimum acceptable performance. Most people will select the first 1, 2, or 3. If they're ready to explain it to the finance and accounting, they may go to the first one and say, should we set this the same as a capital expenditure? If they're uncomfortable with that, they might push it up to a little higher standard. When they do this normally, they're going to go to the 3rd one, and that's let the client set the expectation. We go to the next slide. I want to remind us that in our studies, we see a very high ROI coming from these types of programs. Sales training and product training should capture a very high ROI. It should. There's no reason why it shouldn't be 200, 300, or 400%. These are not uncommon. If it's needed, and it certainly is for product training, if it's supported, and it often is, and they use the training, you're going to have a good ROI. That's the good news. Now we use this data we learn from it. Suppose it doesn't work so well, we need to make changes. So go to the next slide, and we'll wrap up with this particular slide, and that's the payoff of using this kind of methodology. It's the best way we know to align project to the business. We can show the contribution of selected product training programs to impact an ROI. You build a respect of the senior team, and you build the morale of your own team, because I think all of us need to see that we make a difference, some difference in the business impact. These days, the number one reason that people are doing this is to defend budgets, justify budgets, and so it certainly can help us do that. It'll help us get more support for our projects. It'll help make it better in the future by changing and improving the design and implementation. Hey, if you got one that's not working, we're going to redesign it, or we will do something else. And sometimes we want to use this to see if it's going to work, and that then helps us implement it in other areas. And there's been so much talk about earning a seat at the table. This is one way to get there. Now that's a short crash course in ROI. Let me remind you, you've got your downloaded document that kind of helps you through this as well. And we'll send you a link to both a document that describes this in some more detail and a case study. But I'd like to open it up now for questions. Do we have particular questions?
Yeah, thanks, Jack. If you have any questions, feel free to post them into your questions box, go to meeting panel, and I will moderate the questions, and Jack will read them. I just wanted to summarize for a lot of our customers who are trying to do this ROI analysis for their product training, the things that we found useful from Jack's exercise is identifying the goals early on of what's the minimum acceptable ROI, being ultra conservative on the ROI so that the numbers are believable. Sometimes we have a tendency to try and go with the more optimistic numbers, so try and be as conservative as possible so that it is believable and you get credibility. And the two things that I really find are distinctive with the ROI Institute's methodology is going to the people who are at the front lines, so the salespeople, the supervisors, etc., asking for their honest assessment and the confidence interval. Those two really help to get good data, but also credible data that is conservative, that can really help your case with the ROI. So if you have any further questions on anything in particular that Jack touched on, please post that into your questions window.
While we're waiting on that, the typical question that we have is is this a very expensive process in terms of time? And not so much. You can automate parts of it with your technology that you're using, and this is pretty simple, straightforward data. You could even use something like a SurveyMonkey as your tool to collect the data and analyze the data. So in terms of a cost for a particular project, it's usually less than 5% of the total project to evaluate that project at the ROI level. That is, we're spending a small part of your total cost of your product training on evaluating product training. So it's not very expensive. It's not complicated. You can actually do the ROI for using mathematics that are no higher than 4th grade. So I mean, it doesn't have to be very complicated. So it's doable. It's efficient, and certainly it's believable. As you mentioned, it's CEO and CFO friendly because of the conservative standards.
So Jack, we have a question from Allison. What is the best way to account for less tangible benefits of training, such as the improved image of your company or products among the sales reps, and how do you turn this into a dollar amount?
Okay, so it's a good question. Now, first, we take every measure, like image, and we have to make a decision, do we want to try to convert it to money? Now, I have to say, we've actually seen image converted to money, but it's rare, and you can imagine the issue is it credible? What we wind up doing often is saying, well, if we try to put a dollar value on image with no more time than we can really put in this project, it's not going to be credible, so we leave it as an intangible. So we have a discipline and a spirit of always trying to do it. Our finding, and one of the techniques is to find someone else who's done it already, and then pull that in. If it fits our scenario, we may be able to use it. Now, what you're saying is, suppose it doesn't, we cannot convert it. So how do we connect it to a program? So we follow our standards. We're going to go to the most credible source, and that's going to be the often the salespeople who can tell us this, and we ask them, tell us the extent to which this program, this training, has helped you boost the image of this of our company or this product or whatever it is that we're offering here. And that's going to be on a 1 to 5 scale, where 1 is no influence at all and 5 is very significant influence. This is an easy check. But it's connecting to a concept that is very soft, but we want to manage it that way to collect data always and connect it to the program. You notice the way we ask the question is, tell us the extent to which this product training has connected to the image of our company. Now, and then we use that data and we're going to report it to the audience in a very credible way. So it's going to be a chart on our report that's got all our intangibles. We look at them as very important data sets. For some people, the intangibles are more important than the financial calculation, and we have to treat it that way and give it that respect. I'd be happy to send you a chapter on the different techniques to convert data to money, and it comes from our book, Show Me the Money. So if you can just send me a note to jack@roiinstitute.net, jack@roiinstitute.net, we can show you the ways that we would try to find the monetary value on image.
Okay. Jack, if I can just add to Allison's question, if you can tie it into anything that is data-driven, you would be in good shape. So as an example, if the salespeople tell you that they're having a higher number of leads coming in, that can usually be tied to a better brand image. If it is a higher close rate of leads to sales, that can be tied to brand image. And it could also be a lower churn rate among these customers who are coming in because of this product training. So again, follow any of those methods that can help you. We have our next question from for new product training where there is no revenue baseline. Can you still conduct an ROI assessment since the revenue did not exist prior to this training?
Right, we can, because what we're doing now is we're driving the revenue of the new product. We just don't have the pre-data to compare it to. So the question would mean, so you've actually sold this much product, new product. The isolation technique is going to be more than likely an estimate that is from the salesperson. Tell us the extent to which the product training actually caused you to sell this product. And we adjust for the error of that estimate by asking, what is your confidence in that estimate on a scale of 0 to 100%? And we're going to use that in adjustment. And let me just take you through an example. Suppose this person has sold $20,000 in 3 months for the new product. And we ask them, either in a focus group, interview, questionnaire, or an action plan, what other factors could have caused that? And you can imagine they may list 5 or 6 things. So what percent goes to this product training? Suppose they say, well, 20%. 20% of 20,000 now is 4,000. Now we say, what is your confidence in that allocation of sales training? What is your confidence on a scale of 0 to 100%? 0 means no confidence, 100% means certainty. So if they gave 80% there, that means there's 20% error as you subtract 80 from 100. So we're going to multiply it by 80 to discount for the 20% error. So it would now be 4,000 times 80%, and that's 3,200. That's $3,200 in sales. Now for the profit, we got to take the sales, which is revenue year. We know what the profit margin will be or should be, and it may be early on the profit margin is not there, but the target profit margin is certainly assess the amount going to this program. So you don't need to have pre-data. You can have post-data, that's fine. The challenge is going to be to isolate the effects of the program, but we do it the way we just described. If you want to know more on that, yes, excuse me, go ahead.
We are out of time, so thank you for attending. Sorry for the technical issues that we had. As Jack mentioned, we will be sending out a bunch of resources over email, link to this recording, link to the workbook, the case study, etc. Will all be sent here. Mindflash is happy to have Jack and the ROI Institute on this webinar, and thank you to all of you for joining. If you are interested in starting a Mindflash trial, you can start a free trial on mindflash.com and start getting the data to help you measure the impact of any organization. Thank you.